Okay. I don't know if you are a prospective nursing student, if you're already a nursing student, if you're a new nurse, if you're a burnt out nurse, if you're a nurse for 40 years, if you're just family or friend trying to figure out what is going on. I'm here to talk about it. But let me start by giving you some perspective of who you're speaking with or who's speaking to you. That way you see what point of view I'm coming from. I am 23. I grew up with neither a nurse or any kind of medical healthcare professional. So I had no guidance, no inside sight of what being a nurse at the bedside was going to look like, what it entailed, what the work-life situation was going to look like, and how tired I would be. How I fell upon nursing, I had a great why. I thought for real that nursing was my calling, my thing, and it could have been my calling, and it very much could have been what I needed to do then, but callings can change. Sometimes you get put in a certain place and taken away from it, but you don't lose the benefit of what you did there, and I think that's what nursing has been for me, and why it's been so hard for me to separate from it, because a lot of my identity relied on it. But stepping back, it just evolved that way from high school. I was really good at math and science. I got A's and B's. I loved rules. I like sticking up for people. I got into the certified nurse assistant program in my senior year of high school. And that it just seemed like the right next step. If you're a nurse assistant and you're certified in it, then you go ahead and you become a nurse. That's kind of how it goes. Unless you saw something you didn't like when you were working as a CNA. And I never really worked as a CNA. I did my clinicals, I finished. I went straight to nursing school. I didn't work while in nursing school. I didn't have to, praise God. But I was also given very good advice and strict instruction. I think it's the best advice ever was, whatever you do, do not switch your major. And I know somebody was like, that's crazy. If you feel like you need to switch your major, switch your major. I never felt like I had to switch my major. I loved all the classes, all the prerequisites for nursing. I loved what I was learning in nursing school. I loved the prestigiousness of it at our institution. I went to East Carolina University. It was fairly hard to get in. Once you're in, you don't want to back out. You're in. There's people who really, really want to get in that couldn't get in, and you don't just waste that spot. That's how I felt. So I didn't feel any need to switch, and I pushed through, and I got through. And had I not been able to get through, I'm on the GI Bill. So if I were to switch my majors and added a semester, things like that, then I would have to start paying for my schooling. So that is not something I was interested in. And here we became a nurse. I've been a nurse for 1 year, 8 months. I hit the floor August 2020 in North Carolina. I won't disclose the organization, although if you saw me on LinkedIn or if you are close to me, you know what institution or organization I worked for. So it's not very much a secret. And I do feel some tension making this video. I do feel a little bit afraid of like a rule breaker, but I do feel it necessary to share, because how else will somebody know what they're getting into? I wish I did a little bit more research about what I was getting into. That's what I lacked in, is researching what you're getting into, shadowing more, asking more questions, getting to know more people that actually live their life as a nurse. With that said, I've only worked at one hospital for 1 year and 8 months because of a sign-on bonus. By the way, new grads, if there's a sign-on bonus, it's a red flag. I'll talk about hopefully later in the comments. So I can only speak on my experience from one hospital, though I have heard that working in other hospitals was far less stressful than the one that I worked as. And I was encouraged a lot of, hey, don't quit nursing at the bedside altogether, try a different hospital. But I didn't feel it in my soul that's what I want to do. Even if I take a break, maybe I'll go back and I'll try a different hospital, but right now, and we'll talk about it in the personal reasons after logistical reasons, that's not what I'm doing. That's not where I see myself. I'm up here. I did the ED for 11 months, OR for 2 months, ICU for, what's that, like 6 months? ICU has been my favorite thus far. ED was the most stressful, mind you, August 2020 to almost August of 2021. That was the second wave of COVID. I took my break in the OR. I had a friend who raved about the OR, so I tried it out. It was not for me. I actually really like using my skills and running around, but I didn't like some other reasons about the ED that would just take a whole separate video to talk about. And then after 2 months in the OR, the opportunity came up to go to ICU, which is where I originally wanted to go, but there was no opening because I was still a new grad. After getting a year's worth of nursing experience, I was able to go to ICU. It's been mid-stress. My worst days in the ICU did not compare to my best days in the ED. Love the ICU. And so I felt like I was exactly where I wanted to be in the bedside of nursing. I was valuable. I was climbing what we call a clinical ladder, so advancing my professional status, and there were financial incentives. We had just gotten a raise. We had I got the sign-on bonus, so every few increments of time I get more money. I could do the clinical ladder, get certifications, and up my pay. I could become a preceptor. I mean, we could go in on nursing, and I was doing those things. I think the personal reasons hit more than the logisticals, but again, let's talk about just the logistical, I don't even know if that's the right word, organizational, more common, broad reasons of why maybe I and a lot of other nurses are quitting the bedside, and that is burnout. Burnout is so real, and I know some very experienced nurse has to be on the other side of the screen thinking 1 year and 8 months and she's burnt out. Yes, ma'am, she absolutely is, and she can recognize the signs and address them. And I'm gonna put my pride aside and acknowledge I'm burnt out. I can't do this. I'm not gonna keep suffering just to prove to other people that I'm super tough or anything like that. My coping mechanisms has failed me. I have outside stressors beside work that are affecting me, and I can't handle it anymore, and I'm not gonna put me at risk for that. I felt exhausted, resentful. I became resentful of my work. I know I was talking about how I was becoming more professional and trying to advance in my profession, but the burnout, the exhaustion, and the lack of worth that I felt doing it at the same time, it led me to hate my job, essentially. The very, very job I thought I loved, I began to hate because my body would hurt. And I'm constantly reminding myself, I'm 23, my body should not hurt. And then I had come to realization, like, if I get seriously injured one of these days, is what they're going to compensate me with going to be enough? Like, even if they paid for, minimum housing for the rest of my life because of an injury I got at work, would I have the same quality of life? And why am I risking my quality of life for work? There's so many other jobs out there that I could do and make payments, hit the bills and not injure myself with. So why am I doing this? There's more why it's about me and my life and my quality of life. When you get burnt out and you get tired and you get resentful of your work, you begin to give subpar care. And I have a lot of pride in me having been a nurse, and I'm still a nurse. That's another identity thing I'm facing, is as I come away from the bedside, I think I'm not a nurse, but I still am. I still have that bachelor's. I still have that license. I'm still a registered nurse. I'm just going to be in other paths. As a nurse who took much pride in her work, I don't like to give subpar care, but it was very hard to be emotionally, physically, and other dimensions of health-wise drained and be uppity and outgoing at work. And with the responsibilities that were given at this hospital, with very little resources, very little changes, I'm not the only one that feels this way, and I know a lot of people have left and said something. I cannot be the first one to say something, so why hasn't there been change? And to know that change is going to take a long time, I don't got a long time. I can't wait till I'm 40 for things to change. Oh my gosh. Third reason, logistically. So burnout, body aching, injury. Too much charting. And really, if I can go back, I call that my first, or contributing to my first burnout. There is so much charting. I did not get into nursing to be at the computer like 60-70% of my time. It's not why. And it is, my first year is very stressful, the charting responsibility, because I lost a lot of sleep thinking, just super anxious as a new grad nurse. Oh my gosh, did I chart this? Did I chart that? Did I sign that note? Did I put that wrong? You lose a lot of sleep. I lost a lot of sleep. And I've never been a very anxious person, but nursing did that to me. I became super anxious. So anxious that I would come to work sick, nauseous. I had one episode of crying in the ED at work, and then several episodes of crying in the car on my way back home. I didn't have that crying episodes in the OR or ICU, but I definitely had it in the ED. Thing is, you are the do-it-all. The nurse is the do-it-all. I used to feel bad for even not liking my job because doctors are there so much more often at the hospital, I feel like, and they have a greater responsibility and load and, more education that they have to get, that I felt guilty for even complaining about my job because of how their schedules are set up. But I forget that, I'm pretty sure they knew that being doctors pretty serious stuff. And you're going to have that big of responsibility. So you always went through life kind of like a bull, knowing that you carry this much. I came through thinking nursing was going to be easy, honestly. And it is not. And I underestimated how much time would be on my feet. And I did not look at who's by the patient the most. I thought it was a CNA. But it is at the nurse. For those 12 hours, every hour, I'm there. If a doctor feels like a patient or family member can be a little abrasive, they can come in and out. They can, avoid. But there's no avoiding. If you have a tough patient, you have a tough patient for 12 hours. If you have tough family members, you have tough family members for 12 hours. And it's just not that one room, one family members, one patient, thing. You have another one. And sometimes you have more than you should have. That's another problem with safety. An ICU should be 2 to 1 nurses. 2 patients, 1 nurse. But I have seen people have 3 patients, 1 nurse. And we not talking like, it's not safe. I couldn't fathom being in med surge or in any floor where it's 7 patients to 1 nurse, or, 5 or more. In the ED I had 4 to 1. 4 to 1 was, I felt like, a lot too. But who knows, I could have 2 that were ICU worthy, and then 2 just chest pain, kind of felt chill with. But for those 12 hours, we were taking care of basic needs. So feeding, bathing, toothbrushing, request, answering those if you're not sedated and intubated and you're walking and talking. We take care of the meds. We take care of taking your labs. We take care of having clinical judgment, critical thinking, making sure that, after we get a report and you guys see us on the computer, which you're not only spending because of charting, we're spending at reviewing your chart. Your chart is in the computer. When I'm on the computer, I'm looking at you. So don't think, oh my gosh, this nurse, she's just out there always on her computer. Yeah, I have to be. That's where your chart is. If I want to see your labs, before I give you these medications that could affect those labs, I need to be on the computer seeing your labs. You don't want a nurse that just, you're so happy that they're in your room immediately. What if that nurse is giving you a med immediately because they didn't decide to think and look at your labs or what you're here for? Can they tell you what you're here for? Can they critically think about what you're here for? That's something you have to do. Time management, decision making. We have to manage, for some reason, belongings. And I know somebody's going to argue, well, yeah, somebody needs to account for your belongings. Absolutely. If I drop out, I want my belongings accounted for too. I imagine my health is more important than my belongings. But I'm kind of more focused on your health and well-being versus your stuff. And it adds to the responsibility accounting for your belongings, because if something goes awry with them or they go lost, my name's associated with that. Somebody picks it up, usually from when we get it. We might call somebody, we might walk it down, but our name is tagged with it because we accounted for it. And sometimes stuff will hit the fan, stuff will go missing, and they come back to you as a nurse. And so it discourages nurses from even accounting for them. I can't tell you how many times I got a patient and their belongings were not accounted for on the computer, and I saw them in the room and I started accounting for it. Oh yeah, I can't tell you how many times they've come with their stuff unaccounted for, and I understood why. Because a nurse could get pinned to those belongings. So the fact that they could get in trouble for that on top of all the other charting we have to do is kind of a thing that you avoid, because, I mean, you can say, well, I didn't account for that stuff. I didn't touch that stuff, so I got nothing to do with that stuff if it goes missing. Versus the nurse who actually tries to do the right thing and account for those items, tag, you're it. That sucks. Visitation. Love family. I understand the anxiety that a lot of families experience coming to the hospital. You're in unfamiliar territory. But sometimes you'll have something emergent going on. You're a fairly new nurse, and you're trying to critically think about this patient and do all the things that need to be doed. And you need to find the right words in the moment, and God only knows what you got going on outside of life that's going through your mental. You need to find the right words to make these visitors feel safe at home, educated, informed, despite however they come at you at. They could come calmly, quiet, or they can come quick, demanding every single question that you have no answer to quite yet. And you have to admit, I don't know yet. I don't know. But I know. I got to get them hooked up in the monitor. I got to make sure they're safe. I got to make sure they're good and address any right now issues. And then after, I can talk to you. Visitation hours change a lot with COVID. The public already knows the whole labor delivery, husbands not being with their wives and stuff, and you not being able to visit family members. I'm sure you have been afflicted and seeing how the visitation policy can change day to day, week to week. Now it's been like month to month. But we had to stay up to date with those visitation policies. And I remember when I was in OR, there was actually a representative that took care of visitors in the waiting room. And I really wish that the ICU that I was in and the ED had someone to be very knowledgeable or designated to know the visitation policy and enforce it. A lot of the times, security is usually who enforces it at the front, but I think security is kind of low staff too. And visitation policy really is a big thing that slipped through the cracks, and then it falls on the nurses. Once they get to the door, I'm getting cussed out over something I don't even know the policy of anymore. Because if you're here, I'm glad I'll talk to you. If you're not, I might be looking for you. Education. You need to make sure that you're up to par on all your stuff and more. I do believe that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. So if you are a new nurse or a nurse that feels burnt out and they haven't thought about watering the grass, or, becoming more informed about the specialty that you're in and getting excited because you're learning about it, try that too. I tried multiple coping mechanisms and I'm here. So if you already did that and you're here, I feel you. I'm there. You take care of the cleanliness in the room. Well, I don't know if you do. You might be in a different facility and you're like, what? You take out the trash and you clean up the room? Yeah. And the ED are responsible for cleaning the rooms, taking out the trash, everything. Did I try to trash in OR? Yes, I did. Took out biohazard stuff. In the ICU, I didn't have to clean the rooms, but I did have to take out the trash a lot. Make sure I didn't have things on the tables. And I do believe that cleanliness is important in the ICU, because how clean your room looks, that's the impression that family members and visitors get when they come in. If they see the room's a mess, they're kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, either the patient's really bad off or the nurse is really bad off. But if you keep the room cool, calm, collected, and organized, they can have comfort in knowing who's taking care. It's a first impression thing for me. I don't know about your facility again, but accounting for belongings. I'm still on the topic of nurses being the do-it-alls. There's some facilities right here, nurses are doing respiratory treatments. So do-it-alls. I have to make sure that everything that you get, I scan. don't know why. I mean, if Amazon now is to the point where you can go to the grocery store and grab something and put it back, not even have to scan it, I'm sure that technology will come to the hospital soon, and we might not even want it to come soon because that's an expensive thought. But there should really, if there's central supply, and please educate me if your staff is central supply, why can't central supply, when they come and do their inventory, why can't the supplies list come from then when you come in? Why do I have to scan something every time I use it? And God forbid the scanner don't work. I have to scan myself, scan the things. Remember to scan the things if the scanner don't work. It's an unnecessary responsibility. Amidst all of this mess and maybe administration, depending how good your team is and stuff, you got to make sure that you are conquering all these interprofessional, intrapersonal relationships, your emotional, your mental health, and be nice all the time because you're a nurse for those 12 hours and beyond. And I do mean beyond. Because now we're jumping into personal. Is that all my logistical? I don't think that's all my logistical. Oh, yeah, leadership, red flags. Oh, and I'll retouch on this topic too. We had a lot of, I got no problem with travelers. You make your money. And we had really nice travelers who they knew and stuck with the policies, and they helped out a lot. I loved them. Some of my bestest friends and mentors came from travel nurses. That's who we had during the pandemic. Excuse me. And we had a lot of international nurses. Love them too. They were my greatest helpers. And they're so freaking smart. They've worked in so many places you can only imagine, like UK, Dubai, Kuwait, Philippines, Africa, you name it. They've had so much more experience. I love listening to them. But when I understand that they have a bigger contract, mine was $15,000. I hear that some of theirs can be like $20,000, $10,000, $30,000, and a visa tied along with it. And depending on how long they've worked at the facility, they can get sued if they break within a certain time frame, or they'd have to owe a bunch of money at a different time frame. However that goes, it's another red flag if those people start leaving because they have a lot to put on the line. Some of them are feeding their families across the world with the income that they're making at this hospital, at this contract. So for them to go breaking told me a lot. If you're seeing a lot of them fall out at your facility organization, it's kind of a red flag. Yeah, it was just overwhelming, the expectations, the demand, the responsibilities. And I'll be hot with you. I started at $24 an hour, and then it wasn't till like 1 year and 6 months that they upped everybody's pay, and it was $28 an hour. But I'd go home or go to work a really stressful day, or what I knew was probably gonna be a crappy day with my feelings, and I look around at all the hiring signs, like KFC, Chick-fil-A starting $18 an hour, thinking about my old job at Walmart and how I made like 15, and how quickly I could have climbed the ladder at those places, and thought that might be a little bit less stress, a lot less stress, and I'd be making just as much. So what am I doing here? What are we really doing here? You have to really love nursing enough for it to be worth it. You don't go for the pay. I felt like I made a lot of money. $28 felt like a lot of money to me. From my come up, from my upbringings, that's a lot. I'm grateful for it, but I can see now why people say we don't make enough. Travel nurses make a lot. The staff, they make a lot. At least where I'm at. Moving on to more personal reasons. So, like I mentioned, I really enjoyed the ICU. I feel like that's my place, and I was trying to climb the ladder and advance there. And there's so many opportunities to go from there, but I got a really heavy feeling that hit me, I want to say beginning of March, or I was just sitting, charting after a bath that I had given, and I knew I had another bath to give. And I got a disturbing thought in my mind, suicidal ideation, which I don't really ever have. No kind of plan, no actions, nothing like that. But it was disturbing to me because I don't get those. Usually I'll get anxious or I won't sleep. But for that to come into my head, I had to stand back and think. I had to reassess. I had to look at my different dimensions of health. My spiritual health was up there. I was doing my Bible studies every morning, every day, going to church every Sunday. I know it's not it wasn't routine for me. Like, I was actively seeking Christ. And our relationship was getting tighter and tighter. It was getting better and better. I was finding more rest. I was really in a season of working on resting. And I was learning a lot. And maybe I just realized I wasn't resting. I'm not very good at resting, in that I rush a lot of things. I rushed growing up. I rushed the degree. I rushed buying the house. I rushed buying a car. I rush. And that's my favorite thing about work, is running around anyways. If you've ever if you've ever bore witness to me in high school, you would know that from the moment I hit the lockers to the classroom, you're not catching me. Like, I have a very brisk walk. I'm always in a rush. So God was really showing me how to slow down. If I could recommend The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, is really good, and it's even practical. And as I follow these practical steps, a lot of things opened up for me. So I'd give my spiritual health like a B+ at this point in time, around March. Man, I know somebody's over there like, okay, so why do you feel suicidal if Christ is with you? Because, baby girl, I'm still human. I still live here on earth. It's not perfect. Being Christian doesn't mean you're perfect. Let me get that out the mind. Emotionally, the way I could express or control my emotions, that's going to be the difference between when I talk about emotional versus mental health. Emotional is how I express, how I control my emotions. I give myself an F. And I could not handle my emotions, and my fiance can attest to this. I was very irritable. I spazzed out. I avoided family because I didn't want to spazz out on them as often, but I mean, that's all I had in me after work was spaz. Mentally, so for me, mental is, from the outside, how I take things in, how I process them, how I cope with stress and manage the emotions. Not control them, but manage them. How I react to the things that come in and make decisions. I give it like a D. I couldn't really explain why, but it's close to emotional. The things that were information that come in, I address things very black and white manner. I'm very legalistic. It's hard for me to adopt grace and walk in grace versus like legalistic and rules and stuff. And a lot of rules get broken in healthcare. If you haven't noticed already, if you haven't been a subject to the healthcare system or worked in the healthcare system, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. It's very discouraging. That's another thing I could add. Physically, A-. Right now, I'm doing this bodybuilding thing. I have competition this Saturday. So I'm probably the fittest I've ever been, but also not the healthiest because of the manipulation that we have to do to nutrition to get stage ready. So I give that an A- because I probably look great, but I don't feel great because any day that I was not at work, which is usually 3 days out the week or 4 days out the week, when I'm not at work, I'm at the gym. I am training, and I'm training hard. So there was no rest for my body, really. Nutrition-wise, I give it like a C or a D. Again, the closer I got to contest, the less carbs I had. And carbs have been linked to the feelings of feeling good. Hence why you want a cake whenever you're emotional eating, or you want chocolate when you're emotional eating, which I'm learning I kind of struggle with. So again, nutrition's like a C. Social, community, environmental, dimension of health, F. Did not connect with friends, did not connect with family. Only person I relied on was my fiance and my personal trainer. God bless. That it is an F, and it's always been very hard for me. I need to be more intentional in that area. Iron sharpens iron, and I neglect to keep somebody by me and to encourage somebody else. Intellectually, there was there was fostering education in ICU for my clinical educator. There was this board that was happening, but even the board kind of stopped up because, she got overwhelmed with work too. So, I mean, the burnout just all the way in nursing. There was no encouragement, there's no motivation, there's no purpose for me to even want to learn more. I was learning more in the beginning and getting excited about stuff, but then when I worked on night shift, it was more like, we're not doing all that rounding like we do on day shift. We're not trying to solve anything. We're trying to keep them stable through the night. So I give that like a C about how intellectually fired up I was and feeding that health I mentioned. Occupational, an F. That's why I'm talking about this video. I was done with my occupation. Over it. Listed it out. I'm a very pros and cons person. And there's actually more reasons that I should have stayed, maybe financially, than for the reasons that I left. I can talk about that too. Financially, A+. I'm a pretty good budgeter. To me, I was making pretty good money, if not awesome money to me. More than I thought a nurse would make. Going to that pros and cons list, if you want to be really logical, or if I'm talking about more logical me, the idea of quitting when it came on was not something I wanted to do. I feel like I live a pretty, I could be wrong, picture perfect life, and quitting would just tear that image of me and take away my control of the situation. And I like control. I mean, I looked at ICU. It's not a very controlling type A place to be. So, and I like the money I was making. And I got a whole degree in this. And I'm in a contract. If I break this contract right now, I owe $4,000. I don't have $4,000 laying around. I just bought a house. I had to put due diligence on that. We are in a seller's market, okay? There was a lot of chains that kept me to this job. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized why we lost so many healthcare professionals, not only in the pandemic, but still to this day from burnout, is because of the fear of not being able to live comfortably or have a different route after quitting your job as a healthcare professional, whether you're burnt out or not. But the reason for me to leave, the one reason, that the fact that my coping mechanisms were not sufficient enough for me to conquer ideas of killing myself, that reason alone, that one reason, conquers all of those other reasons and chains that would bond me to a job. My life is worth so much more than a job. I can leave that job. There's billions, I don't know if that's the right number, but there are many other jobs that I could do and live a comfortable life and be happy, if not an even more comfortable life, and that I claim over myself. What good is it for me to make all this money and have this much prestige and things for my parents to be proud to talk about if I'm not happy? What example am I setting for my little sister to just fake it till you make it, be irritable, come home pissed off? I mean, what quality of my life am I giving her? What quality of my life would I be giving my fiance? Who's he marrying if I'm always irritable and tired? I'm not cleaning the house as much because I'm just, I'm exhausted. I'm over it. I'm selfish. The job was a modifiable factor, and I'm glad that I was able to recognize that before I decided, oh, I need this job. I need to stay at this job. There's nothing else for me, and would just force myself to do something I'm not happy in. Amidst other costful reasons of me not to quit, it's kind of embarrassing. I've been through 3 specialties. I've only been a nurse 1 year and 8 months. We got engaged I'm planning a wedding. Weddings are not cheap. And we already kind of booked the venue, so we got another couple expenses. We're just starting the process. This is expensive. I have a very unique job, or had a very unique job as a nurse at the bedside. It's rewarding, if that's ever a question in your mind. It is super rewarding. It's super unique. The things that I can talk about at the dinner table are far different than a lot of other people. But it also leads up to another reason why I quit. I'd see people who, they lived all their life working, retire, they're ready to go out and venture and have fun, that they worked for all this money and whatnot, and their loved one dies. Seeing stuff like that daily was a blessing in disguise. They might not have seen it, but their loved one's life being lost touched another person's life. I was able to, and maybe other people were able to, not take life for granted. You make these plans for 60 years from now, and you think that you'll be alive to live it, and you're sacrificing your happiness now to try to live happy later, and you don't know that you have that. I've seen people who, they passed out at work, died working, and I can't help but think, were they happy? What were they doing just a week prior? When's the last time they took a vacation? Little things like that. Daily, I'd go home and I'd think about, the fact, Janelle, are you doing anything any different from them? You're working somewhere that you're not happy anymore. How are you to look at them and think, man, you should have really took advantage of this one life you had and did things that make you happy, but you're not doing that, Janelle. Why are you not doing that? And I figured out it's because of fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of losing control, fear. So this ending is more so to encourage on final thoughts, to let you know what helped me, what scriptures I had to meditate on and really accept and realize this is truth for me. Romans 8:38-39 says that I'm convinced that nothing can separate us from God's love in Christ Jesus our Lord. Not death or life, not angels or rulers, not present things or future things, not powers or height or depth or anything that is created. Nothing could separate me from the love of Christ Jesus. And I feel so good about that. I can quit my job knowing nothing separates me from Him. It got to the point where I realized if I do lose this job and I lose this house and I lose the car and I lose my relationship, I still have salvation. This hard life is not in vain. There's something I get to look forward to. And I can't believe I lived my life so long without that. What was I even living it for then if there was no purpose in it? If I just would have, lived a hard life and then at the end, nothing, go blank. There's things to look forward to. And another one is Matthew 6:30, that, and if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers that are here today and tomorrow and in the fire tomorrow, He will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? And then there's another one about, sparrows and the fact that He takes care of them. Why wouldn't He care for you, the one He died for? He didn't die for the wildflowers or the birds. And He takes care of those things, so why wouldn't He care for you? Okay? Again, you might not believe these things, and I'm okay with that, but I want you to know that it's there, and so I give that to you in hopes of encouraging you, letting you know that you are not trapped, you are not alone, you are not in this video by coincidence. This is meant for you. I want you to receive it, and do what you will with it, and hopefully you come back later, you reject this video today and think, oh, she's lost her mind. I'm like, no, I've found my mind, and I'm taking courageous risky steps. That's so out of my character, and it's only because of him. What's next for me? As far as what I'll do next, I decided to wait until after competition to confirm that I'm doing something. I have an idea of what I like to do, but I want to make sure that I don't rush into yet another thing in my life. I want to make sure that's what I want. Because there was this phase after the ED that I was like, okay, I'll do real estate agent, and I purchased this whole thing and found out I'm not really into that. But that is an option for those that are looking for something else to do. I wish I would have known that when I came out of high school, real estate agent, just do school online, and you can make a pretty good living off that. But it wasn't for me. Like I said, I'm waiting for some confirmation. And then I also, since I am not going to be the bedside and hopefully not as exhausted, I want to advocate for those who are still on the floor. I have some best friends, awesome coworkers, and people that I will be thinking often of. A lot of them are international nurses from the Philippines who don't even want to admit that they're burnt out, but I can tell they're burnt out, and they've confessed they want to do other things, but they have so much to lose. And I do believe they love nursing. Is just this one organization or some assignments that they get that are tough for them, and I want to make it easier and then advocate for them from outside, from off of the bedside. I'll have the energy, I'll have the time, and they just need to rest when they're not at work. So I want to be able to advocate for change for them somehow, some way, and for nurses everywhere. Because I wish somebody was doing the same for me when I was on the floor. That's it. I hope I wasn't too somber about everything, but it is a big loss to me. It is a very big change for me, but I am also the only one going through it at night and the one that's thinking about it at night. So I had to make choices for me at the end of the day. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions, if there's things that weren't addressed, and any notes of encouragement would be super helpful. All right. Thanks for listening.